Yeah.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Looking for a Quiet Life, which is the 9th webinar in our European Green Leaf series. Our presentations tonight deal with environmental noise and in particular with the importance of having access to quiet and tranquil spaces for our health and well-being. This is especially true if we live in noisy urban areas. We'll also be looking at how we can all get involved in identifying, protecting, and ultimately improving the quiet spaces that give us respite from city life. Our presenters tonight are Dr. Antonella Radicchi and Dr. Simon Jennings. Simon began his career as a geologist after gaining an MSc and PhD in geology and geophysics in London. He initially worked for an oil company before he saw the error of his ways and joined Kirk McClure Morton as an environmental scientist in 2003. Simon joined Limerick City and County Council in 2008. He has a passion for sound and gained a postgraduate diploma in acoustics and noise control in 2018. He's also a full member of the UK Institute of Acoustics. Simon's main roles with the Council are noise action planning and noise policy development, and he represents the Council on the National Local Authority Noise Steering Group. Dr. Radicchi is currently a Senior Research Associate in the Institute of City and Regional Planning at the Technical University Berlin, where she's the developer and principal investigator of Hush City. Her research has impacted on policy both locally in Berlin and at European level. Dr. Radicchi is a registered architect and holds a PhD in urban design and territorial planning from the University of Florence, with doctoral studies conducted at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So with that, I'll hand you over to Simon for our first presentation.
Thanks there, Anne. I'll share my screen. Hi everyone, it's great to talk to you this evening and co-present this webinar. So thank you to those of you that have connected to watch. As Anne said, I work in the environment section of Limerick City and County Council, and I deal with environmental noise and noise action planning. One of the aspects I'd like to focus on tonight is looking at how we can identify and assess quiet areas in Limerick, particularly in areas away from road traffic, with a view to protecting them under legislation. I'm particularly delighted that Antonella is presenting to us this evening. She's a wealth of experience and I'm looking forward to listening to her. So the title of our presentation is Looking for a Quiet Life. We wanted to pose a question. Where do you search for quiet and tranquility near you? Tranquility is important to us to distract us from the busyness of our daily lives. And I think that during the pandemic that we've been drawn to the outdoors more and possibly have a greater appreciation of it. I've heard people say that during the lockdown that they heard natural sounds more, and I think the public has a memory of it. I was in the People's Park in Limerick last week and I took this photo. It was great to see. There was a class out on the grass, everyone was socially distanced, doing exercise. It was very peaceful. And it's these areas that are important for us to identify and to protect. So in my part of the presentation, I'm going to go through the importance of quiet areas and their protection, the criteria that has been used up to now in Ireland for the designation of quiet areas, examples of potential candidates, and how we need to take a different approach to previously, taking a qualitative approach. Just before I go any further, I want to acknowledge that we're carrying out this initiative through Limerick being a European Green Leaf City for 2020. In conjunction with the Hush City framework developed by Antonella. I also want to thank the EPA who have provided funding towards this initiative and Limerick City and County Council who are hosting the webinar. This is a quote from Mike Potts in The Search for Tranquility. Sound, like air, surrounds us and affects us all every day, no matter where we are. When we're outside, there is hardly ever silence and it doesn't demand any conscious thought. Sometimes, though, we seek out sounds that we like birdsong, for instance. Sometimes, though, sounds can disturb us, and at worst, they can become unbearable. When we use the word sound, it's generally used in a neutral manner. It's the sounds that we don't want to hear that we call noise. It's unwanted sound. So we might hear a beautiful sound of birds singing, but People might say that the noise from traffic is unpleasant. Noise that comes from roads, railways, aircraft and industry, we call environmental noise. Long-term exposure to excessive, loud environmental noise can be bad for our health. There's the direct injury to our hearing, such as hearing loss or tinnitus, but it can also lead to psychological and physiological distress. We measure the burden of disease in the number of healthy life years lost, compared to the ideal health situation where the population lives free of disease and disability. The World Health Organization in 2011 estimated that in Western Europe, as a result of environmental noise, that in each year the number of healthy life years lost are 903,000 years for sleep disturbance, 654,000 years for annoyance, 45,000 years for cognitive impairment for children. So it can have a negative effect on a child's ability to learn, 22,000 years for tinnitus, and 61,000 years for coronary heart disease. So there's a link to serious health issues, and it can be caused subconsciously without us realizing. In relation to traffic noise, at least 1 million healthy life years are lost every year in Western Europe. Also, the European Environment Agency this year reported on the number of people in Europe suffering from various health conditions due to exposure to environmental road noise in urban areas. In 2017, around 12.5 million people suffered from sleep disturbance and over 3 million people suffered from high sleep disturbance. Almost 30,000 people suffered from coronary heart disease, and there were around 7,500 premature deaths. So it's important that where we are exposed to excessively high noise levels, that we can have easy access to respite from them. So how can we protect quiet areas, and what should we do? What can we do? Well, under the European Environmental Noise Directive, which has been transposed into Irish law, local authorities are required to prepare a noise action plan every 5 years, the latest one being for 2018 to 2023. The Environmental Noise Directive requires plans to be made to prevent and reduce environmental noise, in Limerick, primarily in relation to road traffic noise. But what's also important is preserving environmental noise quality where it is good. And where the environmental noise quality is good, the Environmental Noise Directive allows member states to designate quiet areas for protection within agglomerations, that's large urban areas, and in the open countryside. From 2023, Limerick City and its suburbs will be classed as an agglomeration, and I'd like us to get a head start for Limerick to identify potential quiet areas, beginning in this our European Greenleaf year. The Environmental Noise Directive also requires us to consult with the public in the development of our plans, and so I believe that the Hush City app, which Antonella is going to speak to us about, is the perfect tool to do that, to allow citizens and communities to be involved, to identify and assess tranquil places that are important to them. Now, just before I discuss the criteria that's been used up to now to designate quiet areas in Ireland, I've put up a scale showing the noise levels generated near various strengths of traffic. So, beside a motorway or a busy crossroads, you might expect a noise level somewhere between 70 and 80 decibels. But beside a light road, you might expect it to be around, say, 50 decibels. There is a strong recommendation in the World Health Organization Environmental Noise Guidelines for policymakers to reduce our long-term exposure to traffic-related noise below 53 decibels LDEN, where LDEN is a 24-hour noise indicator, and 45 decibels L-night, where L-night is an overall nighttime noise indicator. Because above these levels, the World Health Organization says there is strong evidence that there are adverse health effects and adverse effects on sleep. So it is important that where we do have access to tranquil and relaxing spaces to retreat to, especially when we live in cities, to break up that hubbub of the daily life. In Ireland, Dublin is the only city to have designated any quiet areas for protection. They've designated 8 quiet areas, mainly parks, that have been designated based on noise modelling, land use analysis, and the assessment of noise levels. At these locations, noise does not exceed 55 decibels LDEN, the 24-hour noise indicator, and 45 decibels at night. This criteria has been based on a quantitative assessment, So there are long-term noise exposure levels that aren't exceeded. However, natural sounds, such as being beside a river, are not necessarily quiet. Natural sounds can be loud. A designation based on a qualitative approach, a measurement of the quality of the sound and the context will be more appropriate. The European Environment Agency do say that in searching for quiet areas, we're not searching for silence, but places for relaxation. Consequently, we need to find and designate calm and tranquil areas in the urban environment. Ideally, we're looking for places that are within walking distance and close to our homes and work. We do take long-term sound level measurements in Limerick City. We have a sound level meter in O'Connell Street on a lamppost by the road. And before the lockdown, the long-term 24-hour noise level was 76 decibels LDN. And through the night was 69 decibels, which is loud. And the main source of the noise being traffic. It's respite from these noise levels that we need. Here is another location that we measure sound levels. You might recognise the People's Park in Limerick. The People's Park is the principal park in the city, and it's the perfect place during the week to get away from the busyness of the city. It's about 3 hectares in size. It was formally opened in 1877 in memory of a prominent local businessman, Richard Russell. And the then Earl of Limerick in the 1870s granted a 500-year lease of the park to the council. Anyway, you'll be able to pick out a sound level meter in the picture that we have located in the park, where we measure sound for the purpose of looking towards designation as a quiet area. The long-term sound level measurements are 58 decibels LDN and 49 decibels L night. They're above this criteria that's been used in Ireland to designate quiet areas. This is a tranquil setting, and it's flagged to me that we need to take a qualitative approach to the identification and assessment of potential quiet areas. I also found this old photograph at the website below of the People's Park from the late 1800s, and it's the same vista as the previous slide, and it shows that it was a peaceful retreat back then as well. I just want to show another location which might be considered a tranquil setting, but wouldn't necessarily meet the 55 decibels LDN, 45 decibels L night criteria that was used in Dublin. This is O'Callaghan Strand on the northern bank of the Shannon River in the city. The natural sound of the river can be loud, yet it might be considered a tranquil place to sit and relax. And you'd occasionally see families feeding the ducks and swans here. As well as existing spaces that may benefit from official designation as a quiet area, there are also other locations that are underused at present, but are due to be improved in the future that would benefit from being protected as a quiet area. For example, community-led projects are going ahead as part of a programme to reimagine Limerick's Georgian laneways. There's Griffith Row and Jesuit Lane, highlighted in brown and green, which will be sites of green urban museums. These will include bringing in planting to absorb air pollutants, and they bring together community engagement, interaction, and learning about history, art, and culture, as well as connecting them with nature. There is also the development of Daly's Lane, highlighted red, into a fruit garden through cooperation between residents and businesses on the lane. And then at Perry Square, highlighted a bluish colour, there will be the installation of a new ramp to provide easier access between the lanes, a certain amount of repainting, and the installation of an art mural and seating. These laneways will be a retreat from the hustle and bustle of the daily life in the city centre and would likely be quieter than the main O'Connell Street running through the city, being shielded by the buildings around them. These may benefit from being protected as quiet areas. This is a beautiful slide taken by Sean Ryan, and it's at the Westfields wetlands in the west of the city. I was thinking about the study of quiet areas, and the album title Quiet is the New Loud by the Kings of Convenience, a Norwegian indie band, came to mind. Soundscapes, taking account of the human perception of sound, is an emerging science, and taking consideration of the context of sound, including quiet areas and tranquility, is coming to the fore. The Welsh Noise Action Plan is actually called the Noise and Soundscape Action Plan, in which the quality of the sound has to be considered in the design of new spaces. Research shows that quiet and tranquil areas have a positive effect on our psychology and mental health. it can make us more creative, it can promote reflection, and it can make us more aware of the world around us. And it's not until we've lost our tranquil spaces that they become important to us. So it's important to protect them or regenerate them. Now, the focus of my presentation has been on the city, because Limerick is a green leaf city for 2020. I don't want to neglect County Limerick, though. There are places of outstanding beauty like Loch Gerhead that may also benefit from being designated and protected as a quiet area. With that, I'm going to pass over to Antonella, who's going to discuss the Hush City app for identifying and assessing quiet areas, and her experience and advice for building healthier and quieter cities. Thank you very much there. Okay, I'm gonna... Hi there, Antonella.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon and Anne, for having me here tonight. It's a great pleasure and honor. And in my presentation, I'm going to talk about Hush City. That is a participatory framework that enables people to map and assess quiet areas and share the location on a web-based map. Open access. And I will start by discussing how Hush City works and how Hush City was implemented here in Berlin. As Simon already discussed in his presentation, noise can be a health hazard, especially long exposure to excessive levels of noise can cause physical and mental problems like cardiovascular diseases, cognitive impairments, depression, sleep disturbances. However, sound is also a resource that is fundamental for our living in the world. We use sound to communicate in our daily life through languages, but also we use sound in our daily life to orientate ourselves in space. For example, we are pedestrians. When we deambulate throughout the city, we need sound to understand, for example, if cars are passing by. Think about the power of music to enhance our emotions and feelings. And also listening to natural sounds, for example, coming from water, fountains, from birds, can have positive effects on our mental and physical health. And it is for this reason that the European Environmental Noise Directive obliges major cities in Europe to protect quiet areas in open country and in agglomeration. However, because sound is something objective and subjective, what urban quietness means to people and how we can identify and protect quiet areas in cities are still open questions at the European policy level. To address these questions, I have envisioned and implemented Hush City. That is a participatory framework to map and assess quiet areas and share this location and related data on an open access platform. Hush City is grounded on 3 pillars. Number 1, the soundscape concept. This means that I'm mostly interested in the way people perceive and understand the acoustic environment in the location people live and work. Number 2, I use citizen science mobile technology as the medium to favor the participation of people in the mapping and assessing of the quiet areas. In doing this, I follow trends in citizen science, where scientists have used mobile apps to favor the involvement of citizens in addressing open questions in science. Number 3, City is grounded on the concept that quiet areas should be considered as urban commons. In other words, quiet areas should be considered as resources that should be accessible to everyone in our society, that should be located in the places where we live and work, possibly at a walking distance, so that everyone can reach easily them. The Hush City framework is composed of 3 participatory components. People are enabled to map and assess the quiet areas with the ultimate goal to gather data that can inform and orientate policymaking. How can we involve people in mapping and assessing quiet areas? I do this in 2 ways. I developed Hush City, that is this free citizen science mobile app that enables you to map and assess the quiet areas and share the data on an open access platform. But I also involve people in mapping and assessing quiet areas by conducting sound walks. Sound walks are public walks that I lead in selected areas in cities with participants, and together we walk through the quiet areas and we assess their qualities by using Hush City to gather data about the quiet areas. Now I'm going to explain in a greater detail how the Hush City works. 3 are the main functionalities of the app. As I mentioned, you can use the app to map and assess the quiet areas, but also you can share the data via social media or on this open access web-based map. You can also use the app to discover the quiet areas that are collected in other cities worldwide by other people like you. So if you want to use the app to map and assess the quiet areas in your neighborhood, in your city, or in the place where you are, you launch the app and you are directed to the homepage that you can see here in the screen. If you click on the black button, Map the Quietness Around You, the app guides you through the data collection process. First of all, you are invited to record the sound of the quiet area where you are. Then the app calculates the noise levels, and you are invited to take a picture of the quiet area where you are. Then you can reply to a questionnaire to assess the quality, the acoustic quality of the quiet area, but also the environmental quality. Finally, if you are happy with the data set you collected, you can share the data via the app. Here you can see the screens of the mobile app. Specifically, you can see the screens that allows you to record the sound, to analyze the sound you recorded, and to take a picture of the quiet area where you are. These are some of the screens of the questionnaire that you are invited to reply. The questionnaire is composed of 20 questions addressing many aspects of the quiet areas. As I mentioned, you are invited to assess, of course, the acoustic quality of the quiet areas. For example, you are invited to express your preferences in terms of the positive and negative sounds that can promote and disturb your sense of quietness. But you are also invited to assess the presence of people in the quiet areas and eventually the activities that these people are doing in the quiet areas. You are also invited to assess the visual quality of these areas and to evaluate the sense of security and emotion that you feel in these spaces. And you are invited to assess the accessibility of the quiet areas and the level of maintenance and the level of cleanliness, for example. Once you shared the data you collected via the mobile app, the data is linked in real time to this open access map that is available at this website. And here you can see all the quiet areas collected internationally by using Hush City. And if you zoom into the map, for example, here we are in New York, you can see colored markers popping up. The colored markers are the quiet areas. And if you click on each of the colored markers, you can see a window popping up and you can explore the data collected by that user in that quiet area. You can listen to the sound recorded. can watch the picture, you can read the responses provided by that user. As of today, we have 4,200 plus quiet areas crowdsourced internationally in 20 plus countries. The most active countries are Europe, the US, Brazil, and also in Asia we have Singapore. If you wish, you can also become an Hush City ambassador. For example, if you're willing to be very active in mapping quiet areas in your community, and if you're willing to promote the use of the app within your circles or with your local authority, you can reach out to me and you can have your name publicly featured in the Hush City website. Now I'm going to talk about how we implemented Hush City here in Berlin. So the app was used by the municipality of Berlin in 2018 within the framework of the public campaign that was held for the preparation of the new Berlin plan of quiet areas. The municipality of Berlin promoted the use of the Hush City app via their website, but also we conducted a couple of sound walks into districts here in Berlin. The results were that people collected more than 170 quiet areas throughout the city. And these quiet areas that were collected using Hush City are represented by means of small dots. And in the background, you can see the larger light and dark green areas that represent the quiet areas that were identified by the municipality of Berlin in the previous Berlin plan of quiet areas dated back to 2008. So what people did by collecting the quiet areas in Berlin using Hush City, what people did, they showed to the municipality of Berlin that there are many more small quiet spaces placed on the local level that can be identified and protected by the municipality of Berlin. And that actually do not overlap with the larger quiet areas that were previously identified by the municipality of Berlin. So the municipality of Berlin also wanted to understand more what the characteristics of these quiet areas are. I did some analysis and I found out that there are certain characteristics that are common to these quiet areas crowdsourced in Berlin using Hush City. For example, the quiet areas belong to 3 categories. They are linear paths along water infrastructures. They are also enclosed nooks like pocket parks or secret gardens. And they are also relatively small public squares. These quiet areas are usually equipped with seating options so that people can sit and spend time there. They have a high quality of landscape and also somehow they're surrounded by landmarks. Also, people associated with these quiet areas positive feelings like sense of calmness, pleasantness, happiness, and interest. And they associated with these quiet areas positive sounds that enhanced their perception of quietness, such as natural sounds coming from birds, from the wind through the leaves, for example, but also sounds coming from human movements like walking and from human voices. So the data collected in Berlin regarding these quiet areas was included in the new Berlin plan of quiet areas that was released this summer. Here you can see the cover of the plan and also the map with the quiet areas collected with Hush City. And the municipality of Berlin also took into account these citizen-generated data, and this led to the introduction of a new category of quiet area. This new category is called urban quiet and relaxation area, and is supposed to be defined only by qualitative criteria, and they will be further studied in the next 5 years by means of pilot projects. Another example of the way that data collected with HashCity was used in Berlin is represented by this master plan that I designed using the data that people collected during the sound walk that we have in the district of Mitte in Berlin, in the Parkstraße area. We had the sound walk with a group of participants composed of local residents, public officials, and professionals. We walked through these 6 quiet areas, and at each of these quiet areas, we stopped, we listened to the environment, and then we used HashCity to collect the data about these quiet areas. We also had public discussions because we wanted to get feedback from the participants in the sound walk on the way they would like to be applied in order to protect and possibly also improve the acoustic quality and environmental quality of these quiet areas. I will give you an example. The quiet area number 4, it's a public square very used in this district. Here you can see a picture and the measures that people recommended to be implemented in order to enhance the acoustic quality of the square and also the overall environmental quality. For example, people recommended to add water features next to the benches that are placed under the trees. But also people recommended to mitigate somehow the noise coming from a large street line in the square. And specifically, they recommended 2 actions. Number 1, they recommended the implementation of earthy noise barriers, like, the sonic crystals. And also they really recommended that the implementation of speed limit reduction. I would like now to wrap up my presentation by sharing with you this take-home message. That is also the core message of the leading editorial Sound and a Healthy City that leads the special issue that we published for the journal Citizen Health. So the core message that we would like to share with you all is that to create healthier urban environments, it's important to involve people and also to integrate soundscape and health into urban design and planning processes. Thank you very much for listening, and I will hand it back to Simon now.
Thanks there, Antonella. Let me just start my video. Now, thanks, Antonella. That's really interesting finding about how HashCity can be used for designation and design of quiet areas. So, in Limerick now, at the start of 2020, we promoted the HashCity app at our European Green Leaf 2020 launch for Limerick. We'd organised a sound walk through Limerick City and a talk to the public to be led by Antonella in June. But then, unfortunately, that had to be postponed because of the pandemic. We didn't advertise the HashCity app when the most severe lockdown restrictions were in place because we didn't necessarily want to recommend people being outdoors when the government advice was to stay indoors. Also, during this period, lots of streets were unnaturally quiet and didn't represent business as usual, even though it was peaceful. As I mentioned, I think the public have been left with that memory of natural sounds and potentially appreciate the outdoors more so. Since then, we've been using social and local media to advertise the HashCity app. Moving onwards, well, we're hosting this webinar. Afterwards, if any of you would like to contact me further, that you may think that be benefits to our collaboration, please contact me at the following email address, simon.jennings@limerick.ie. Or if there may be a wider audience, community groups that you may be aware of that would benefit from using the Hush City app, then please put them in contact with me, or vice versa. I honestly think that the results from the Hush City app can provide information needed to allow us, the council, to determine a qualitative criteria to be used in the designation of quiet areas of benefit to our mental and physical health. First of all, though, we need to collect data from the public. Looking optimistically, we still intend to go ahead with the Limerick Soundwalk and public talk when it's safe to do so. So in the meantime, I hope that you and your families all stay safe and well. Please, please, please do download the Hush City app, and the next time you're in your favourite everyday public space that provides you respite, and they don't necessarily have to be green spaces, use the app. It will help us towards designation for protection. Even if you're not in Limerick, please download and use the app and make people aware of it. And with that, I'll say thank you for listening. Thank you to Antonella for your wonderful presentation, and I'll hand back over to Anne. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Simon, and thanks to Antonella for those really interesting presentations. Thanks to Simon for providing the context and in terms of what noise can do to us, and also our need for quiet areas. And thanks to Antonella for describing the app and its application. I think it's clear that the app has much broader application than just capturing noise, that it's quite a useful urban planning tool. We're very keen to recruit users in County Limerick so that it can feed into our next noise action plan. We'll be an agglomeration the next time round, which means our population will be over 100,000, and that means that we need to have quiet areas designated in the city. So we're looking forward to seeing the information we'll get from the public. We have a few questions. I think one of them here was asked before Antonella's last few slides, but Antonella, can natural sounds counteract unattractive sounds?
Anne, can you give me the possibility to start my video, because it looks like it's blocked. Okay, thank you.
So the question is, can natural sounds counteract unattractive sounds?
That's a super interesting question. Thank you very much for asking this. In principle, yes. Natural sound can be used to distract from background noises, and sometimes sound designers or environmental acousticians use this technique, to improve the acoustic quality of places. From my personal perspective, I would recommend to apply this technique, but in parallel to work on the reduction of noise. The example I shared with you in my presentation, the example of the public square in Berlin where we went through during the sound walk. That example shows that people, in fact, recommended to add water sounds in order to improve the acoustic quality, but on the other hand, they recommended to reduce the noise coming from the large road nearby by implementing speed limit regulations. So I'm in favor of adding sounds to the environment, but it's also important to not forget to reduce the existing noise.
The next question, Antonella, is one that's come up a few times in Limerick, and it's, can trees and vegetation be used to screen traffic sound?
This is another great question. Thank you very much for asking. I would say that from an acoustic perspective, greenery per se is not so much effective in reducing consistent amount of sound levels that could be really appreciated through our perception. On one hand. On the other hand, we need to consider the interplay between that usually takes place between visual and auditory experience. So there are studies that proved that the presence of greenery in places enhance our sense of quietness, our sense of relaxation, our sense of tranquility. And these can play an important role. But in terms of sound levels, maybe Simon, would you like to expand on this and discuss this in a greater detail from the quantitative perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Antonella. I think trees, I mean, when there is wind or there is another, the trees can mask the sound, but I don't think they can particularly be used as an element on its own to remove unwanted sound. And so trees themselves can be limited.
The next question, Antonella, it's partly for Limerick, but it might be one that you can comment on as well. Are there any plans to engineer small, purposeful places of quiet in the city? I suppose we're at the very early stages of this process. We're just collecting or attempting to collect the data at this stage. So we're not even clear on what the need for those areas would be yet. So it's a bit down the road for us. But in Berlin, was the data used to engineer small areas of quiet?
At the moment, not yet. We are, as you mentioned, in the early stage of the process. So we had this great result that people showed interest in using the app, showed interest in mapping and assessing the quiet areas. And this was not obvious at the beginning of the process. City started as a very small pilot project that was supposed to take place in a neighborhood in Berlin. And there was skepticism because, no one really knew if, you never know if people are really interested in a topic and if they are willing to participate. And then what happened is that people showed a huge interest, and people overall Berlin started using the app to collect the data. And this was a surprise also for somehow the university where I work, but also for the municipality of Berlin that was a partner of the project from the very beginning. And then the second step was to continue promoting the use of the app, then to test the app within the context of the public participation for the update of the Berlin Plan of Quiet Areas. Then we entered the phase of analyzing the data and coming up with a new category of quiet areas to be introduced in the plan. And now, and in the next few years to come, the idea is to work on pilot projects in order to move to the next step, to the design and protection of these possibly quiet areas.
Thank you, Antonella. We have a comment here that using a qualitative approach makes complete sense in order to designate these quiet areas. And I think listening to your presentation tonight, it certainly does. I've actually got a question for you. You mentioned sonic crystals as a noise barrier. I haven't come across those. What are sonic crystals and how do they work?
I'm not an acoustician, so I cannot provide too many technical details, but our noise barriers that are composed of cylindrical shapes that produce some sort of frequency that can be modulated and shaped to be opposed to some background noise. But maybe Simon, would you like to discuss this.
I've not come across sonic crystals either, but maybe they're those crystals are excited at certain frequencies, so they remove certain elements, certain frequencies of sound.
Apparently, yeah. To the best of my understanding, the research is still somehow at the beginning, but they look also quite good from a visual perspective, and they offer also. They don't constitute, the classic wall, but it's more like a composition of cylindrical sculptures, I would say.
Interesting. We have a comment here from really information from Stephen. He's saying it's related to the first two questions, really natural sounds and greening. The Conference of European Directors of Roads are currently funding research into the area of psychoacoustics and investigating the benefit which may arise from greening, different styles and colours of noise barriers, etc. So this project is entitled FAMOS, F-A-M-O-S, if anybody's interested in looking at it.
Well, we should be looking at that as well. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you for sharing.
Antonella, maybe could I ask you a question? I know that you've carried out sound walks in other cities, and when you carry out these sound walks, do you use the Hush City app?
Yeah.
So the data is collected using the app, and how easy is it to train to become a person who leads a sound walk?
Oh, it's rather easy, and there are other ambassadors now that lead sound walks using Hush City.
Right.
For example, Sarah in Bristol, she is one of the first persons that got interested in Hush City and in conducting Hush City soundwalks, and she founded Bristol Soundwalks in Bristol. Everyone can be trained in conducting soundwalks, and I can also share the pocket guide to soundwalking that I wrote a couple of years ago. It's an easy guide of few pages that aims at giving an introduction to everyone that is interested in doing soundwalks.
Very good. So it's something that we could think of,
and also solo soundwalks. Yeah.
So it's something that we could think about in Limerick as well.
Absolutely. Yes.
There's a commentary question.
If I may, just on an additional note, soundwalks can be conducted and Hush City app can be used, but you can also, and of course, conduct soundwalks also without any tools, just bringing with you your open ears and your open body to the environment.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So one of our earlier questions had, pressed enter a bit too soon. There was a bit more to the question. And this was the one about the qualitative approach. In the event that such quiet areas are specified in future noise action plans, then it would be necessary for local authorities to seek to ensure the potential encroachment into these areas is addressed at the planning stage. Have the speakers any thoughts on methods of assessing additional noise in this area? It would be difficult not to fall back on the quantitative method. I think, Simon, maybe you have an answer to this, because it's maybe related to the protections that would be offered quiet areas when they're designated.
Yes, well, I think in terms of the protection which is provided under designation, really the designation, it highlights the explicit benefits of a quiet area. And I'm not sure that it really goes further than a soft designation. So it's, I think at the planning stage, there is the material consideration of environmental noise. There would need to be some consideration of the quantitative noise levels, but how you bring that, the context and the qualitative nature of the sound into consideration, I'm not really sure yet.
I think this is quite a new area for all of us. And because so few have been designated in the country, it's still not exactly clear how planning will be dealt with them. Sarah has asked, is the app only targeted at urban areas or can it be used in rural areas?
So it can be used in rural areas as well, but I'll let Antonella, it's Antonella's app, sorry.
No, Simon, please go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, no, well, I mean, as I say, the focus of our presentation, or my presentation, has been on the city and talking about agglomerations, and it can be used not only in green areas, but urban areas. But we have the county in Limerick as well to think about. And I think there's definitely some areas that could benefit from being looked at for designation as a quiet area in the county, some places of outstanding natural beauty that could be thought of. And other places as well. So it's not necessarily just for urban areas.
There is a comment here that it would be great to have sound walks for schools and local communities. So it would be nice to, while we do intend to have Antonella over once restrictions are lifted, in the longer term, it might be nice to have a noise champion who could conduct noise walks for schools in the area.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I did also here in Berlin sound walks with the children from secondary and primary schools. And I also published the paper reporting the results. It's called Sound Walking with Children for a Quiet City. And it's fantastic to conduct sound walks with children. They are so much aware of the acoustic environment. They share so much knowledge about it. They are so enthusiastic, at least in the sound walks that I had with them. I really had great experiences. They showed a curiosity, you know, a genuine curiosity, and provided inspiring feedback, and definitely it's something, and also from an educational perspective is important, because you can educate the children when they are young also on the importance of protecting a good acoustic environment. And yeah, if I may, I would like there is an educational program adopted by the City of New York, to which contributed Dr. Erlin Bronsoft, who is one of the major noise experts in the US, and had the privilege to work with last year when I was in New York. And she collaborated to the creation of this curriculum that is called Sound and Noise Curriculum, and it's available on the website of the New York City municipality. So everyone can access it and download resources and benefit from them.
Okay, great. Actually, it's a very interesting comment here from Stephen about, and it relates back to the question about the protection of quiet areas. He's saying that Dublin City Council have managed their quiet areas very well. In the planning of the recent Lewis line, detailed discussions took place to ensure that one quiet area adjacent to the proposed alignment was not negatively impacted. In fact, the tram line was realigned to reduce the impact. The benefit of the quiet area was put forward in the Lewis EIS as part of the overall regeneration benefits of the scheme. So that's really interesting, and good to know that the designation does have some weight in planning. Now, Alistair asks, and this is one for maybe both of you, can the app be used to highlight where in the city there are serious issues of noise that could affect human health? Mm-hmm.
Thank you for asking this question. In principle, I would say yes, because, you know, the app allows you to record and analyze the sounds, so you can use it also for mapping noisy areas in principle, but it would be out of the scope of the project. I would, if you're interested in mapping noisy areas, I would recommend to use other noise apps that were developed by colleagues in the field. And if you wish to have an overview of the noise apps that are on the market, I can share a publication I wrote where I reported the state of the art, a review of mobile apps that are available to assess the soundscape and also the noisescape. So eventually, you guys are interested in mapping noisy areas, please feel free also to contact me, and I can share this review with you and can give you feedback.
I think also on our behalf, in using the Hush City app, we'd like to see the shift towards focusing on positive sounds.
Yeah.
I mean, noise can be a nuisance, but this is a purpose for looking at the positive side of sound and identifying places which are tranquil and relaxing for people.
Somebody has asked to what extent the transition to electric cars can help reduce sound levels in the city, or how should this impact this field of study?
I suppose that's me. So I really, in below a certain speed limit, at least with petrol and diesel cars, it's the engine noise that creates most of the noise. Once you go above a certain speed limit, it's the tire noise that becomes dominant. And so with electric cars on the high speed roads, really you're going to get the same sound levels from them. In the city, when cars are traveling a lot slower, I don't really have experience of what the sound levels are from electric cars, but maybe there will be some reduction in the areas where we have the slow speed limits. But once you get to the higher speeds, tire noise is going to take over.
If I may, I would like to add 2 comments to this question, because it's a very interesting one and very much asked during this kind of conversation. The first point I would like to make is that the implementation of electrical vehicles can be of some benefits, can bring some benefits, of course, but from a city planning perspective, it would not change the vision of the city. It will still remain a car-oriented city. On the other hand, if you really want to go towards a more environmentally friendly city, we need to revise this concept and move from a car-oriented concept to a human-oriented concept. The second point regards the sounds or the noise that the combination of multiple electric vehicles will made in the future. And this is an under-investigated topic that was drawn to our attention by the studies done by Professor Klaus Ganuit from Head Acoustics. And he gave several presentations at international conferences where he discussed this aspect. Okay, you think that an electric vehicle could be silent? Are you really sure? And what about the combination of multiple electrical vehicles? How will they sound all together?
Thank you, Antonella. I think that's all the questions we have. So thanks very much to you both. Antonella, we're really looking forward to having you in Limerick.
My pleasure. While
we've done this as part of our European Green Leaf City, it's also an initiative that marries very well with an European project we're involved in, Urbanised Health and Green Space. And I noticed one of our partners is in the audience tonight. So hopefully when we can travel again, maybe some of our international partners will come over and experience the sound walk in Limerick with you as part of our Urbanised Health and Green Space project. So thanks very much to you both, and thanks to our audience tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.